I guess I'm of the opinion that if the porch is there, I'm a little more accepting of.
I can't hear you.
I'm a little more accepting of changing them to the doors, but I understand your point. Yeah.
Well, it's one way to honor the past of
Yeah.
that house is the fact that it did not have a porch at the second floor. So we're, by having three sets of French doors, we're reinterpreting this house dramatically.
Yeah.
I mean, by having a double height porch, we're reinterpreting the house dramatically.
So the question is, where would the door be? I mean, just looking at it.
It would have to be on the right side, because the left side is the bathroom,
Right, okay.
which is unfortunate, because then you have the front door.
That's
That's
what I was
why
getting
doors,
at, exactly.
it's there, yeah. In the other houses, they show the upstairs door to the porch above the entry
That's
door.
exactly what I
So
was-
there's a balance to it.
Symmetrical.
In this case, because the bathroom is above the entrance and always was, we'd have to put it on the other side, so you'd have a long door, an entry door,
A window.
two double height hung doors. Balance might be.
Well, I mean, one example had the doors on either side of the facade, so there's that. Yes, I won't argue that having French doors and all the windows would be nice and it would balance the facade. However, it is, really rewriting the house's history. So I am not comfortable approving three French doors at the second floor. I can, make a case for appropriateness for one set in order to access the porch.
And it would have to go, well,
On the right
is that, yeah. I'm suddenly imagining French doors in the bathroom anyhow, but that's another issue from the inside. I tend to agree. We are changing an awful lot on the front of this house, and I think it in general is an improvement and is trying there. And you folks are working really hard to keep it in the spirit of its original date, which I appreciate. But I tend to agree that if we can get by with one door out on the second floor and one door in on the first floor, that will be more in
So
keeping.
do nothing on the first floor at all, leave the windows?
Oh,
Windows, yeah, it's the same,
or what about two?
Wait,
No,
wait.
that wouldn't work.
So
Were you
you-
thinking
so what was-
six?
what was the
No, they're
slide?
actually, if I understand they're replacing, the proposal is to replace all windows with doors that would somehow hit the window frame to go all the way to the floor. And I think it would be striking, but I'm
But
not
it
sure
would
that
In
it will
another
be.
district.
Yeah,
we don't approve things because they're nice, we approve things because they're appropriate.
right, and that's why I'm wondering whether it improves the visuals if there is entry door and then two rather than three.
No, I don't think that changes anything.
Okay, because I was imagining we've got the entry door on one side, we've got the door to the porch on the other. What about their proposal on the first floor directly beneath?
Which is what that other one has, right?
Yeah,
They have the entry doors top and bottom opposite the front door? Is that what that's showing?
the house we have has one entrance and 5 windows. So to the extent that we could preserve that fenestration of the house, it would be great. But to reinterpret every opening on the facade as something different except for the main entrance, I think is too much.
Okay.
And that's my opinion.
Could you summarize again what you found when you went into the window openings? You found that,
The original wood that framed out the opening
right?
went top to bottom, and then when they did when they had new lumber, when they did the current replacement windows, that was obviously bought in the last 20 years. That's regular, everyday bought from Herzog's or wherever they bought it. But next to that was lumber that wasn't original, what we call a king stud, that holds up the actual outer frame, and then the inside portion, which is called a jack stud, brings you to your true open of what the window is set in. That was different. So something was framed prior to the original. The original window went all the way to the floor. And then something, I would have to guess, within the last 60 or 70 years, it was framed to become a window as opposed to something that went to the bottom. I don't know what went to the bottom, because they did have the long windows that went
Right.
floor to ceiling.
Yep.
So I have no idea. There are photos to tell me, but all I know is whatever was there did go all the way to the floor.
And that's on all 5 windows?
No, the two lower.
The 2 lower, okay.
That's why at least for that, to do the twins there. and
Because
then
the framing went all the way
to the floor, yes.
But it was never a floor to ceiling opening, it was just the framing went to the floor.
Well, whatever was originally in there was floor to ceiling, but that could have been a window. Nobody's gonna know that unless there's some archival photo.
Do you have a photo of the house that's immediately, if you're facing it to the right? Did one of
No.
those photos include a view of that?
Yeah, it's a brick home, so no.
It's completely different architecture.
Okay.
The rest of the houses facing to the right are very similar. They're small 2-story brick houses. And then the Cornell carriage houses to the left. And some of the, yeah, with a stone wall across the way that's 10 feet tall.
So these below originally went to the floor. These are,
We don't know if the windows themselves went to the floor.
but the openings
The
obviously did.
framing.
Right, so.
Yeah, the framing
So
showed
are you
something
saying it
else.
might have been a door at some point?
Nobody would know. Nobody.
I would doubt it would be doors, it could be the larger double hung windows.
Yeah. I would,
There's precedent for that.
Yeah, and that's true, there's plenty of that in the neighborhood. All right, so does that change your point of view on
No,
the
there's not
proposal
enough
at all?
information to make a case for French doors, in my opinion. But I need to see photos or more evidence that they existed. It's a pretty, drastic interpretation for the house. It's rewriting adding a porch is one thing, this is, like I said, an appendage. But, reinterpreting the fenestration of the house is more.
That's true, but the question
So
here
last
is,
week reinterpreted
was
better.
this, is what we're looking at now historically accurate or not?
I think the most that we know is that the openings here on the first floor, windows, could have been much larger. We don't know that about any other area.
Right.
Is that true?
correct.
So then, to go ahead and say that what we see here, we can go ahead and assume could have been up there, there's no evidence.
Right, but no, you didn't find that in the lumber, so.
No, the upper part was so bad, it basically fell apart as we took the siding off. So I have no idea what the upper frame was.
My feeling is this is a house that we don't really understand.
Yeah,
And
and it's
to-
been through a lot of construction in
Right.
its day.
Right, and to think about that, in the future, we might better understand. There could be photos that come up that really make a lot more sense. Changing the fenestration as dramatically as you're talking about, while beautiful, I think, would give some false information perhaps about what this structure, what this building really was. I think, at least for me, I feel only comfortable enough to say for the 2nd-story porch, another doorway in might be the most, just for functionality's sake, just for, livability's sake, the most comfort level that I have. If you start thinking about that in any of the other openings, then the facade is completely rewritten in a way that just with the porch changing, as we say, it's an appendage, they come and they go, sort of.
But what about the lower, any of the lower doors? What about the one directly under what you're proposing?
I could be possibly swayed about that. I still think that the symmetry would seem very odd there. And I don't really feel that comfortable going 2 over 1. So.
Can I just interject a what if, and it's only because I'm responding to Marissa's comment about, authentic and nice at the same time. There is, as we all know, a French door with a solid panel, which would maintain the same amount of glazing for what you now see with the window pattern. So I'm just throwing that out as a what if.
Yeah, closed, it would be identical to look aesthetically on the window in its closed position.
I'm
Let
still
me-
not
let me-
okay
let me-
with the creating new openings
Right,
where they
well,
weren't
yeah,
historically.
it does change,
Oh.
yeah.
On the other hand, below there appear to have been openings historically that are larger than what we're looking at today. And so how do we properly integrate that? I'm having a tough time locking us
We don't have
into the
enough
1970s.
It could have been for ease of framing, it could have had nothing to do with whether it was a window or door. That's, you just don't know. about
Okay.
whether they're-
I'm with Leslie on this, that, to the extent that we can preserve what remains of the character of the house, which is the penetration. Because the porch was ruined with the 1950s, 60s changes. So we're reinterpreting a porch as a double height porch, okay. But the fenestration and the siding is what we have. That's the last remaining historic details that really gives the reading of a house. So the less we alter that, the better for the integrity of the house going forward. If down the road there's evidence and covered of, there were bifolding doors or French doors on the first floor and floored ceiling, then we can work with that. But we don't have that information. So all we can go on is what we know for sure, which was that there were double hung windows on the first and second story and an entrance on the first floor. The second story, in order to have access to the second story porch, you need to have a door to get out there. So a case can be made for altering one of the windows into a doorway. Perhaps that doorway, even if it's on the opposite, if the door is on the north side of the facade and on the first floor, and it's on the south side of the facade, on the second floor, maybe the doors are the same style. So kind of, maybe they're, narrow double doors, because we don't know what the original door was, so.
Right. I think, well, I can't guarantee anything, because nobody knows, but it would have been mostly glass.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of having it in the front. And it's not a security issue, it was to let natural light in.
Yeah. Since we don't know for sure, I would
Right,
say we
again,
have more room for
speculation.
interpretation for what the doors are. My only suggestion, if you want to balance out the facade, is that the doors be somewhat similar. Maybe they're both French doors, the main door and the second story doors are French doors, but all the other windows remain as double hung windows.
And the length I guess I keep bringing it up, the height of the windows below. Are we going to be matching that to be close to floor to ceiling, or are we gonna, do you think that it is more historically accurate?
But without the doors, we would leave once there.
Okay. What do folks think?
So without the door replacements, they're vinyl replacement windows in
Yeah,
there,
unfortunately.
and those would stay.
Yeah, the whole house is all vinyl replacement windows.
So you're not gonna replace windows at this time?
Yeah.
It's either the doors or they stay windows.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe in the future, when the windows come up, vinyl windows don't last forever, so they will
Right.
need to be replaced. Maybe in the future they can be replaced with wood windows. So.
All right, am I sensing a consensus around one door on each floor?
No, she said no doors down below, just on the other.
Oh,
One door.
one front door.
Oh, front door.
The
Yeah,
front
yeah.
door.
I'm looking at it.
We're not going to pole vault to get into the house. That would be tough.
How will others celebrate? Well,
A
I
tightrope
just have
walking
to
stick?
say, when I looked at the house today, I did notice what Alan brought up about the second floor roof being kind of high, and that it looked off. I couldn't quite figure out what it was about it, but it bothered me, so
Yeah,
I agree
think
with that.
it got, yeah. it
And
got-
and in terms of the windows, to be honest with you, I thought that what they had done was a massive improvement over what was there before, because I saw the house, a picture of the house when it was sold, and then I saw it today. And I wasn't even sure at first if it was the same house. I had to look at the number.
Wow.
I did think the vinyl windows were ugly and out of place in the house. I don't know if you had got wooden windows or doors, whatever, if you had planned to, paint them white or what color, but the windows just kind of like stood out against the clapboard in an unattractive way. And so I'm disappointed that they're not going to be replaced. I mean, that's what I have to say, but overall, it's a massive improvement. And
I think to your point, the integrity of wood windows is far outweighs the vinyl windows. It just so happens that in order to match what was in the rest of the house, those few front windows were vinyl in the hopes of switching out and going to the expense of making custom doors that fit the space in wood painted. And I know this may not mean much to you guys, but we bought this. We owned 50 Post Street, which was a magnificent house. It was a carriage house for Thomas Cornell's estate, who was powerhouse in the mid 1800s. And we had no intention of buying another house on the street. The house came up at foreclosure, and we looked at each other and we basically said, we don't have a choice but to buy the house. And the reason I'm saying that is because we felt we couldn't leave it to somebody else to do what should be done. So we have gone to extraordinary lengths to build this house inside out, and to Peter's credit, an extraordinary amount of work. Refound it. I mean, the foundation was shot. It was literally dust, unbeknownst to everybody else, taking the floors up and what have you. So the house had been rebuilt and solid in every single way. And so the feeling that we had as we were looking around the area is the things that really impressed us that we thought would be fabulous and exciting and in keeping with the spirit of the rundown in general were these couple of houses that we saw that happened to be on Adams Street and Rogers Street, and we thought, oh my God, that's like unbelievable. It reminded us of New Orleans and that spirit and that history that exists there and so on in particular. Anyway, so we went ahead with the idea that this was the fantasy about what this should be. And because this house is unlike the other houses on the street, there's nothing to mirror it or to reflect back and say, ooh, because we're not into the ooh. We have this beautiful, Second Empire style, carriage house that's very unique and what have you on the corner. And then we have a series of small, modest, two-story brick structures that are almost devoid of any detail whatsoever. Maybe a little too much, but whatever. And they each need a little bit of tweaking, and to Peter's point, the guy I met next door, he owned the building, he did everything at Home Depot, and I said, Peter, we cannot have one iota of what this represents or feels like in this house. And so he was very on point about whenever we brought ideas up, about this idea, that we were following literally to the T, and at expense, like I say, to make it what it should be. John and I do interior design, we own a store in Kingston where we're successful in what we do, but we're very, very integrity driven. I mean, that's if anybody were to know us really well and our clients, that's what they would basically say to start with, I think, and that's a goal of ours, it's who we are. So anyway, so that's how this came to be. And probably, I would say in so many words, if we had already gone through the expense of what we did, and with the idea, fantasy of these doors, which was part of this thing, you know, I guess there wouldn't be vinyl windows up front, because they're abhorrent. I mean, you know, what am I gonna say?
There's no question.
There's no question. But I'm just saying, that's how we came up with this. And in the spirit of, I mean, you're all invited to come to a party that we'll have sometime soon when this happens. Because we're very proud of it, you know, and I think I can see your passion, you guys, and where you're coming from. So I appreciate it. I'm not like in disregard of it. I totally get it. I wish you were around in certain neighborhoods I've lived in, because you know, people just go ahead and do stuff and they shouldn't, and it's
Right.
bad.
Right.
It's
We've
not,
seen
A lot of
it's
our
not
work is-
great. So I'm sorry I'm going on, but I just to let you know where we're
Thank you.
coming from.
Thank you for,
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
we really do appreciate it.
yeah.
And what are we dealing with in terms of getting new drawings and timing?
I will be sitting in my living room doing it tomorrow.
I mean, if you want to sketch it out as you did for this,
Yeah, I did all those drawings,
And
and
then-
simple,
send it to
Accurate.
Lori, and then what we typically do for small modifications, that if you're not making additional changes beyond what we discussed, and
Mhm.
basically it's way of us confirming what we agreed
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
tonight, we can give a preliminary approval with the understanding that you'll submit drawings to Lori,
course.
and then she'll circulate it to all of
I'm
us.
usually in her office every week anyway,
Okay.
I'm a regular with her.
That is true. So,
Yeah, the only thing that, that when the stop work order came about, there's a safety issue that was involved. That day, I was gonna install the railings up top. Because if somebody does come in and they wanna see what the porch feels like, they walk out of the second story and there's no railings. But a stop work order means you pack your bags and you leave. I need to get those railings out. I mean, right away, even I don't wanna go a day without the safety. Safety has to come before, you know, approvals, meaning if we don't get approval, we take them back down,
mhm.
that's fine, but I need
Okay.
to get those on.
So, let's just go one more, do we know, so we really can just sign off on each of the
Sure.
drawings
I'll
and
submit
talk about the
everything to Laura,
doors? So what is the decision with the doors?
The upper right,
They're upper right,
facing the house, the upper
and they're
right
gonna
would
be
be a twin
French
door.
doors
Mhm.
with glass panels,
Glass, yes.
wood and glass.
Well, all wood, yeah, custom made glass.
Okay, and then the entrance is gonna remain as it is,
Correct.
the entrance door,
Mhm.
okay.
So first floor entrance,
I'll show you, I'll submit a side elevation.
Okay.
Roof pitch.
Second floor.
Do you want me to label what I'm gonna put on as a membrane, or does that even?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Second
It's probably gonna be EDPM, but.
Yeah.
And that's to the
Are
right.
there
is your-
dividers on the door? You know, big
open,
white-
No, just-
building, a French door,
French door, glass and wood.
glass and
We do have, when we're done deliberating, a member of audience who would like to make a comment.
We didn't take public comments on our application.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. But we're trying to, one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Let's deal with the alterations that we're proposing.
So for
What we're
our,
expecting.
the porch will remain double height. The roof will have a reduced pitch to expose the entire frieze board. And first story of porch will have decorative brackets, no decorative features to the second story in order to differentiate new from old. First floor entrance will remain as is. Second floor upper right opening will be a French door, glass and wood,
Yeah,
right?
one thing after the no decorative features on the
Second
second
story.
story, except for modest or,
Well, that little capital, you know, I just don't wanna post just,
yeah,
That's-
it's capital, except for simple capital.
It's already
Capital
existing.
capital details.
No,
Capital-
it's like
So
the
very
faces.
simple,
additional a
You
colleagues
can
have,
call it
but I.
Detail, I believe is the phrase you're looking
Yes,
for. Are we right here,
uh,
Alan? I trust you implicitly with the
Except for
terminology.
simple column,
With a little
capital
capital on the bottom of that.
Yeah,
just
so
for
Yeah.
detail.
essentially what we're saying is no scroll work, nothing really
Okay.
fancy.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
I think that's everything.
And
You would
then
like a
the sketch.
specific approval?
Time out.
Yes.
We haven't talked about color at all. Is that another discussion?
Oh, right, we didn't talk about color.
The color, like I showed you in the picture there, we did everything we could to try to replicate what we exposed. It is so faded, it had been bleached out to nothing, but we did a whole series of the great colors that were there. And then even brought it to Herzog's and letting everybody to say how much was this bleach, what do you think was more original to that? I mean, it was a week-long.
I
believe also,
I did that with the steeple on the old Dutch church. You cannot imagine the number of layers.
Right. No, the range looks good. What we would really prefer is having a sample of the color, a chip, in other words, for our records of what.
Okay, because that's a Benjamin Moore historical color.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you know the name of it?
gray,
Kendall charcoal.
no, gray.
What is it?
Gray.
Kendall charcoal.
No,
No, it's gray.
That was
No,
me.
that's
Right, we
it's
changed it.
legitimately gray.
Oh.
It's the only one that has a plain name.
okay.
Oh my lord,
Oh my
it
God,
exists!
The name of the color is gray.
Oh,
No,
Yeah.
this is the,
What will be?
That's-
we're talking
That's
about
the
the
color.
porch being gray.
Okay.
Am I
Yeah, oh,
correct?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's one
match
of
the
the
porch.
Yes,
Yeah.
everything's gray.
Is every,
Okay.
Porch
no,
will be
the trim is not a
Well,
different.
hold on,
Yeah.
Lori.
Okay.
It's all the same.
Monolithic steel, yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
I take it back.
We're not
It's
saying
Kendall
that.
charcoal.
We are saying,
We use Kendall charcoal in almost every project.
It's
embedded in my brain.
right, it's an actual color. It's
Porch
dark.
being
Urban bronze.
Porch will be painted gray, got it.
Got it.
Is it Chelsea?
And, and should we give specific approval on that railing?
Oh,
Why I
okay.
suggested it there, but.
Peter, should we give specific approval on the railing? I mean, I think a safety issue is worth addressing. I don't
Yeah,
want to
the
leave you
railing
hanging.
is the old design that replicates the other house. Like what I did was I took the top rail
Mhm.
and I found a rounder bit to give it. You have to meet code requirements for handrail and gripability, graspability.
Absolutely.
So I need to meet code compliance with things. So I did that and found a router bit which gave it not only the code compliance, but it was that look that
Great.
kind of the other house.
So the railing will be as proposed.
The lower railings are on, they're already installed and painted and done. Well, it's the
Great.
same ones, and they're already pre-built, sitting on the front porch. They're already made size, ready to screw in.
Yes,
Yeah, I submitted.
that's the,
As submitted.
yeah, I want to give you specific authority to get that
Thank
done
you.
as quick as we
Thank you,
can,
thank you,
because
thank you.
that's
The upper railing.
Upper rails, yeah.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
he's going to submit a sketch
Yes,
to us for.
the revised roof plan, roof framing plan,
Revised plan will be.
and I'll give you front and side elevations.
And,
and I'll
and-
do
And the
Yeah.
detail for down below.
Yeah, and then the support designs.
Yeah, just do a detail of that.
Right.
and also just the change in
The windows.
the window.
Yeah, that'll all be reflected in the new drawing.
So the application will have conditional approval.
Okay. So, does everyone understand? I'm gonna ask for a motion, what we were approving.
Before we approve, we have to, if the public.
I just want to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about, and that's the board that really needs to
Is
get
there
that.
anything else?
No, I think.
All right, so is there someone here to address that for, again, I'm not, is someone behind me?
Somebody has something to say?
About this one?
Yeah.
Floor post? Oh.
Yeah,
Hi. I wanted to understand, so the top floor has the 3 windows, and it was the bottom floor where you saw that there was maybe more of an opening, and that might very well have been paneling or some kind of decorative wall
Mhm.
thing, because often the frames will go all the way down to the floor, but then there'll be a window above, maybe
Right.
2 panels.
Right.
The top floor, the height, the size of the windows, they appear, they're a little smaller possibly than they originally were.
Yeah, they were what was there when the home was purchased,
Those windows were there when the home was purchased,
the
but
size of those windows.
the original size of the windows may have been larger.
it's impossible to tell because of the
Right.
condition of the wood when it was
But those-
exposed.
Okay. the size of the windows that are in there now, are they large enough to walk through? When the house
Yeah.
that I grew up in, the windows on the second floor, it was a brownstone, so it was the parlor floor, so those were tall windows, but, we had a deck added to the back, and what my mom did was she just put stairs up to the window, and
Yeah.
instead of putting like a many paneled door, she put a full,
Yeah.
it was a, they were
I've
double
seen houses
windows.
like that.
Yeah, and so you
Yeah.
just step up and go out, and
In this
And
case,
that-
they're not large enough. They just need fire egress. Again,
They
for
what?
fire egress, for code compliance, you need to have a certain size window in case of fire to be able to get out.
with,
And we've
wise.
met that criteria.
yeah,
But no,
but
certain-
height-wise.
I know only because to build it, I had to go in and out of it 100 times, and it's no chore. I dread doing it. I'd rather jump it off.
Yeah.
2 stories down the house. Go through the window.
Well, I guess just to have on the record, I think it would be nice if it could have 3 identical windows that were all the original height, or
Upstairs,
not the
they
original
have,
height,
yeah.
but if they were all a height that might have been original, 3 identical ones, but then just have steps and have one of them be a door, but not really so visible from the outside, because then that would be more in keeping with the original look of the house. And then I also wanted to just say that I live in the Rondout too, and every contractor that I've had has not mentioned permits. And I grew up in a historically landmarked house in Brooklyn. And I know I have a lot of familiarity with landmarks. My parents did everything themselves. They never had much money to do anything except for like strip wood and stuff themselves. But I found it very frustrating that no contractor that I've ever spoken to has volunteered to put permits in. That it's always this thing, well, let's try and get away with it. And then we're doing the right thing. We'll make sure it's the right thing for the house. We don't need to get historics involved, but they're such a resource, and I think that owners are relying on contractors. I know I'm not supposed to address it, I'm sorry, the applicant, but I just wanted to have it on record that owners are relying on these contractors to know the permitting process for the neighborhood. And in this neighborhood, that permitting process within the RT Historic District involves going to historics first. So I would hope that it could be, I just wanted to be part of the record that this is a really important
And you
resource.
find it to be a recurring problem?
Constant.
Yeah, we have
I've talked to
as
many
well.
contractors, and all of them are trying to hide. The last one I insisted on putting in permits, because I knew that you had to put permits in. I was just installing heat, and they were, like, the people that were working with them dropped off like flies. They're like, oh, you're working with permits, forget it, I'm no more carpenter, no more, because that's just the way it's done in Rondout. I did all the, so,
All right. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, any further discussion based on that? All right, would someone like to, does everyone remember our proposal here for contingent approval? All right, I will entertain a motion.
I will, first, I'd like to make findings of that,
That's fine.
just to be on the record, that the house that we discussed, reviewed tonight, 44 Post Street, has, I have to get my language in my head. The application that we reviewed tonight, 44 Post Street, has had work done without prior approval of the Landmarks Commission. Therefore, this review is, was what? It's retroactive, well, kind of retroactive approval of work already completed. Just wait a second.
Go ahead.
Just let me know when you're.
Go ahead.
That prior to the unapproved work being done. The house was in poor condition. Covered in vinyl siding. With replacement windows. And very little original historic details intact. The house as we know it is a two-story framed house with a single-story porch, front porch. Constructed circa 1880. Unapproved work was done to restore the house's original clapboard siding. And restore the cornice, comma, the corbels of which are not the original corbels to the house. It's on the record for posterity. And the porch has been altered to be a double-story porch. Period. Was findings of that. So I move that we approve on condition that we preliminarily approve
Contention.
yeah, can I, actually, you're writing on there, I can just read, I can just read that paragraph and we'll be done.
Right there.
I'm just gonna read this and that will be it. Approve the double height porch, which will be modified at the roof so that the pitch is reduced to expose the entire frieze board of the cornice. The slope will be less steep. The first story porch will have decorative brackets. There will be no decorative features on the second story except for simple column capital details in order to differentiate this new addition from the historic porch. The first floor entrance will remain as is. The second floor upper right opening will be altered into a doorway with a French door, wood and glass composition. Porch will be painted Benjamin Moore gray. Railing design will be as submitted. An applicant will revise plan and submit to the building safety division for final approval.
So moved. Do I have,
Yeah.
I think that's complete.
Should we say building safety and the commission, or, and the commission? And the commission.
And us.
And
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, it'll be submitted through the building
Yeah, actually,
to
I
us.
said
Yeah,
that.
oh, okay.
Do I have a second? Julie wins. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to take up your entire evening.
No, it's important to go into detail with something like this, and you've done a lot of wonderful detail work there. So I do have to ask, how's Nick? Is he in the neighborhood?
Well, he's actually in his fourth year at Yale.
Appreciate it. They're so
Teaching medicine.
Wow.
So Sam, is that a professor?
Sam, yeah, he's living the dream. He's an astrophysicist. He's in his last year of PhD at the University of Hawaii in Honolulu.
Wow. Oh, we both know our kids were going to be superstars one day.
Yeah. How did we get that phase? How did this happen?
I'm glad they are.
Yeah. It does mean that I'm really glad I have a beard.
Exactly.
Use it well.
I'm proud of them both.
Yeah, so am I. Great to hear. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Nice.
My
And the
pleasure.
conditions are so long, I can't finish.
Yeah, you'll just have to photocopy and staple them in. You did great getting them all down here. This one had a lot of interesting little tweaks. And I'm guessing that you are here on 66 North Front?
I am, I apologize.
Good night.
No,
Thank you.
as it turns out, that worked out wonderfully. Have a seat.
I have to apologize for being late. I had my times mixed up. I'm glad I made it in time.
We had a lot of detail to go through on Post Street, so it's just as well.
So I have it, I mean, I scanned it to everybody too, about all the color pictures. I hope that was more helpful, color pictures than last time I think I just scanned the pictures.
Okay, so let's
I think
share.
color pictures, that helps.
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you.
You can actually have my copy.
All right. Everyone understands where we are? Formerly known as Columbia.
The old Columbia Beauty.
Yeah.
I've been there shopping already.
Ooh.
Several times.
All right, well, we will defer to you. All right.
So we're proposing a single-face sign on the Crown Street side and a double-face hanging sign on North Front Street side, excuse me. For the client, a cream background and a dark orange, not a bright orange at all, copy. And then leave the carving on those signs, at least on the hanging sign.
So there is already a sign, the wall sign, there's another sign there, or,
No, there's no sign there.
okay, there was, because it was Google Street View, I did
What did it say?
2012, it was hair salon.
Oh, from when it was a different business or something?
Yeah. It's a business, does the business occupy the second floor?
Yes, it is.
It does, okay. I think it's unfortunate that there is no signboard over the cornice, because of the way the cornice is designed with this shed,
Mhm.
that there's no, historically over a storefront, you would have had a freeze board for the sign, but there, that doesn't exist.
No, in this building, I guess that doesn't surprise me. Further down is more storefront. This is sort of wraparound glass with the entry on North Front.
Correct.
So I'm not sure there was an entry, or the original configuration is well lost, I'm sure, by now. So you're right, it seems logical. It's sad that it's not there, but it may not ever have been, given the way this building came together through its centuries.
And there are no other tenants in that section of the building?
No.
It's a massive structure.
No.
It is.
Not a space.
I think the hanging sign is fine. I see no, seems perfectly appropriate. The wall sign, you know how I am about signs on walls? You know, having floating signs up on the upper part of the facade is always a little distracting from the architecture. However, because of this architecture allows for no signage, that's the only place that a sign could be placed on the facade. I guess my only comment is it seems a bit large in comparison to the scale of the windows. I would like to see it slightly reduced in size,
For example,
like 15%,
okay.
10 to 15%. Just so that it doesn't overwhelm the windows up there.
So more like 60 by 36?
Yeah, if it was, so it's 40 inches by 65, so if it was 60 inches or 58 inches wide, just a slight reduction.
So 58 inches wide by constrained height?
Yeah, whatever proportion, keep the proportion of the sign.
Yeah, I agree, totally. Yeah,
So it doesn't overwhelm the windows,
Yeah,
scale of the windows.
Yeah, I have, is it okay if I jump in now? I have a technical concern. This appears to be a spot where a downspout used to be and is no longer. If there is water pouring through this little receptacle right here, you have a major problem with something. I don't know if water is just spilling down the wall. And, but if you look at the before, there's evidence of water damage right here. So I would say it looks like a missing downspout. And if that's the case, not a good place for a sign.
Go behind it.
If you have a place on the space in the facade, it could accommodate a sign.
True.
Well, maybe, I mean, there could be a very flattened downspout that could possibly go behind, and you could pop it out, sure, but you'd have to talk with the.
There does seem to be a water problem there.
Let's see. Yeah, I think there is.
So how would it be affixed?
It's the building with painted screws for the mortar, the grout, excuse me, and then the bricks, we wouldn't penetrate the bricks themselves.
Hmm.
If you,
Do you know for a fact that there was a downspout there? It just looks like there needs to be one, or the water is sloping off the roof and down that way. It doesn't seem to have a place, it's not directed anywhere, it's what it appears to be happening in the room.
Well, I'm seeing that little
Yes,
little thing right here,
this
looks
little
like
white-
a boot, which possibly used to have a downspout. My guess is when they introduced this lower mini mansard, they couldn't deal with that downspout. They just took it away, and the result is the wall got damaged. So, it's a perplexing issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a huge amount of water, it's only this wide, but look what it did.
Well, I mean,
I
you
know.
only hear with science. I mean, we
I
can
know,
approve
I
the
know.
signs and suggest that the applicant have a conversation with the landlord.
I'd be happy to explain that to them.
Yeah.
so I'm wondering if we need to say something about the design of the sign, if it needs to be bumped out, or,
That's part of it.
yeah, that's my
Push away from the
concern.
building,
Yeah.
we can have some space for signs, not
Yeah,
not a big deal.
okay.
How much does it need to be?
What would be the,
3 inches probably wouldn't
Okay.
be enough, yeah, I would imagine. This could be handled with a 2-inch slender, flattened leader downspout.
Can we go up to 2 inches of a gap then?
Maybe, I mean, you've got to coordinate this with. your-
Just for approval
Client,
reasons, I mean, if I have to
yeah,
install it at
sure,
a certain
sure.
distance, I need to make sure that I know what I'm
Yeah,
allowed and not
yeah.
allowed to do.
Right, yeah.
So is 2 inch acceptable to everybody then?
If
Yeah.
technically you
Okay.
can get it to work, sure.
Eleanor, are you looking looking at the picture on Google Street View. Can you move over and just see if there anything on the other side?
Yeah, there is a downspout at the corner. Yeah, right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you looking at Google for Street View?
This is what Lori said.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Maybe
I don't
the
know
photo
where
that we
that is.
provided.
Yeah, right here.
Maybe the photo that we provided.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, if you go back in time, you can see how the other side will look on it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think Colony actually used to have a sign on the shingles with the first floor, which I don't think looked very nice personally, but I know at one point, I'm not sure where in the building they had that, but I believe that's where they did have something.
And, you know, I wanted to suggest doing a blade sign on this side too, but you have the window awnings there, so that would
Yeah.
limit that visibility.
And it's also a one-way street, so you couldn't be able to see it from the other direction either. There's a ways.
All right. Any further discussion? Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you for pointing that out very much, Alan. I mean, integrity of this building long-term is really what we're supposed to do. And so I'm glad you caught on to that, and I think I hope that the building has recently changed hands, am I right?
Indeed, yeah.
Okay.
I'm honestly not sure if they sold it, but I know that the Columbia Beauty moved down the road
Yeah.
a little ways there, so I'm not sure if they still own it or just renting or leasing to these people. I'm really not sure.
Okay.
Actually, the sheet for the permitting, we had to have a landlord or owner signature on it, so she probably tells you there who owns it. There's no
Here it
recall.
is. Owner's name Craig McElroy.
Okay, well, that's my client, so then he
Okay.
must have purchased the building.
All right, I thought that's what had happened. All right, yeah, so please do mention it to
I certainly
them,
will.
because I think that will be important long term.
Can we put that in the minutes? I mean, make a note of it.
Yes,
So-
all right,
so
so
what's
I think I will
okay.
follow you and make some findings of fact. The application is for new signage at the corner of North Front Street and Crown Street. The hanging sign as submitted will be on a bracket and chain, 36 inches long, 28 inches wide. The Crown Street face, we are noticing some deterioration of brick behind the proposed placement of the sign. We're asking that the sign be reduced to 58 inches wide.
By whatever proportional
proportionally.
height.
And proportional reduction in height to be centered between the windows. And we've asked the applicant to approach the owner about installation of a downspout, and to allow that, we've asked that the sign be on spacers a minimum of 2 inches from the brick.
It's actually more of a motion to approve than the findings, but whatever.
I've jumbled them. All right, well, there's facts and there's plans in there. I'll have to get better at this.
No, I have to too, it's not quite
Yeah,
clear.
I do this formally for lawsuits. It's hard for me to wrap around it when I'm focusing on the facts. Does that sound complete and clear to everybody?
Yes.
Then I will so move. I need a second. All right, Julie wins again.
Quick job.
She's quick tonight.
That's really delayed.
Alan almost got you, but no.
Just not quick.
Fast.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you
Thank you,
kindly.
everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good luck, Tyson.
Thank you.
Let me
And-
just get you the signs.
You guys want a new garden?
Yeah. So, today.
All right.
And we're going to, that one is approved, and then
That's the whole
with
thing.
conditions, so it's
Oh,
also
it's
we're talking
We're
about
overly
changing the
excited.
sign of
Shrunk it and then popping it out.
That's funny out of the way too.
The one sign, yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you kindly. I think, do you want to talk about
I have
the,
multiple different items.
okay, one thing I really do want to plug is the Preservation Conference in Albany. I don't know if everyone got the email. I was really excited about that. I haven't been to one of these in so long, it's embarrassing. But it's just up in Albany. It's April
26.
through 28th. There are special CLG community-only scholarships available for this if you want to, and it's a first come,
I've
first
already
served.
applied for all of us. So-
Bless you.
But I have not gotten a confirmation, so that's Thursday, April 26th, and it's most of the day.
And so you would have to be able to clear that day.
Yeah.
That's one thing they specifically request for the scholarship.
Do we not have a meeting that day?
The 24th? No, we're the first.
On the Thursday, you have HAC?
Oh, I have HAC in no, they're Wednesdays. Wednesdays.
So it's Thursday.
I just
is
had
the
it last
first night.
night, so I'm a little confused.
Mushing it together. It all blends after a while. But I was really excited. I don't know the details, but they have stuff that is specifically pitched to folks in our position and promise a lot of introduction of what's happening in other cities around the state.
And obviously it would count for our training for the year.
Yeah, which we have not been keeping up with in any sort of formal way for a very,
We
very
did
long
last year,
time.
yeah, we did
last
it
2
in
years.
September.
That's right,
We'll
and-
do it in April, we'll be like well caught up.
Yeah, so it's exciting. Other times it's been at a distance that's been difficult for us to get to. You guys drove to Rochester, as I recall?
Right after this meeting in the
Right
summer.
after this meeting, and we got into
On the
Rochester
snow.
like 1.
Yeah.
Then we had to get up at 7.
It was pleasant.
Yeah, well.
Oh, we didn't need a hotel room.
Oh, yeah.
So I will forward information about that. I actually, we got an email about it today, so I didn't print it out, but I will forward it to you. On a related note,
Can I just ask a question before we move on? When you are applying for us, are you applying for just Thursday or for the whole conference?
it is for the whole conference. You don't have to go. It's a scholarship that you get to go to camp.
Kind of.
It's-
The
it's called
Thursday.
camp. It's run by the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. And it also includes admission to the conference itself.
Oh, good, okay. Because at this point, I'm interested in the whole thing,
It's a full scholarship.
so. Okay.
But my question, I put it, Historic Albany is organizing, it's collecting all the names. I think that everybody on our commission can go, but I haven't gotten confirmation yet, so I'm still waiting if we all qualify for the scholarship. So.
Or they may decide they want to
more information
sprinkle it
come,
around.
yeah.
It's not entirely in our control.
So, and then talking about the National Alliance and Preservation Commission, we have in the past talked about becoming a member of the National Alliance and Preservation Commission, which would, the benefits include, we get a publication that talks about articles related to issues of local commissions, Preservation Commission, not just any commission. Online member forum where you talk about issues. We get technical seminars, meetings and workshops, reduced registration at the biennial conference, and also full access to their resource library.
And that may be the one thing that I recall us using when we were a member in years past.
So I would like to propose that we sign up for 1 year and see how it goes. and see if it's worthwhile, but at least we get access to those resources geared towards land use commissions.
As
It's
long as-
$100.
Right, we have a budget this year that I think has room for this.
So, yeah, we have, I know.
Yeah, we can cover this one. There have been years where that would not have worked,
Hasn't
but
been happening.
yeah, well, yeah, we got